Hey everyone, we are just starting up our stream, and so we're just gonna check and make sure that it's working. And I don't know if it's streaming or not. It is. Stream, good. And so we'll won't stick around for the preamble. Just check. We'll just do a couple of shares and we'll get the ball rolling. And if you guys are interested in commenting, please do. This is live, so we can get back some feedback and use that to help go through what we've developed so far, and then move on from there. This will be part 2. This will be only 2 parts, and we're going to do 2 parts, and then we'll homebrew something else another week. And if you guys are interested in commenting, please do. This is live, so we can get back on a couple of channels feedback, and use that to help go through what we've developed to the races. And then move on from there. This will be part 2. This will be only 2 parts. And we're going to do 2 parts. And then first thing I'm going to talk about another week is once again, I probably should have switched these screens over, so I'm staring at the screen instead of constantly staring at here. But I'll go through it really quickly. So we have changed rules considerably from what we know from Ultramodern 5 in order to adapt itself to Remnant. We are adapting Remnant to 5e. We're not probably the priority is to adapt Remnant, not 5th edition. Staring at here, but what I meant to say is that we want to alter 5th edition to conform. So we have changed the rules considerably. Classes won't really worry about the number of attacks because the number of attacks is determined by your weapon. So your weapon is going to determine the number of attacks you get through a standard action. However, you are limited on the number of shots you can take per target, which means if you have 3 shots, you can't split it up between multiple targets. Every 4 shots, you can change a target after that. Won't really worry about damage range are only in d6s. So 1d6, 2d6, 3d6, 4d6 for standard action. There is ideal range, which is your full dice damage, and then beyond ideal range, your damage reduces. One dice off for every range increment. And we gave a couple examples. You can take Enigma, 2d6 lightning, ideal range is 10 feet, rate of fire 4, magazine 25. It's a crit plus 0, which we'll explain. Weak 0, stagger minus 2, and on a hit, secondary attack against targets within 10 feet, 2d6 damage. And because there are levels to weapons, we indicate here the damage increase of these weapons as you level. So 2d6, 2d6 plus 1, plus 2, 3d6, and this goes on because these weapons can level, which we'll explain. Here's the Deceit, another weapon that's very famous from the game. 5d6 piercing, ideal range 100 feet, rate of fire only 2, max 6, crit plus 2, weak 6, stagger 3, and then we have the damage value spread off for that one. And we do the same thing with Nightfall as well. Weapons can also have something called mutators, and mutators can be leveled up as well. And they can be attached, but it takes 5 minutes, so you can swap these out. There's a lot of things where you can swap things out, but you have to do it through a short or long rest. Battery, for example, we talk about the battery, and it gives you the 10 levels. And then we have also bottom heavy, rate of fire plus 1, magazine below 20%, and it increases very slowly, incrementally until level 10. And we even made time wave work, so you can swap these out. But to do that, we had to add rules. Twisting wounds, there's another one. That was a difficult one. It's a very popular mutator. And we still have to deal with traits and mechanics. We've added some traits where we get to a quick dodge, which is a reaction to increase your AC by 5. That's something that everybody gets. We have a stamina, which is your con score, so this is a new mechanic. If you don't drain your stamina at the end of your turn, you regain your con modifier to your stamina. So if you have a 16 con, you have a 16 stamina. You can use an action to regain stamina. If you use a dash action, it costs stamina. The dodge action costs stamina. And the drain depends on the armor you're wearing. So if you're using light armor, there is no stamina use for these actions. Medium is plus 2, heavy is plus 4, ultra heavy is plus 6. Con, you have a 16 stamina. You can use this action to regain. And then the reaction quick dodge also takes stamina. The dodge action. We also have rules for the relic. And the relic on the armor costs an action to use. And you use that to recover all your hit points. That's the Dragon Heart. There are other ones resonating, regenerate 5 for 5 rounds. Starting pieces get 3. They do not encumber. You can use it on your allies or yourself. You can resurrect characters within 10 rounds. Pretty straightforward, honoring what relics can do. So if a character drops to 0 hit points, and even if they fail, like there's no, I think obviously there's no such thing as death saving throws. You're down to 0, you're down. Starting pieces get 3. And even if you die, you're just simply warped back to the starting. Resurrect characters within 10 Your hit points equal your con score. You gain plus 10 hit points on top of that. PCs regenerate 1 hit point at the end of their turn if they don't suffer damage and or above 1 hit point. Obviously, there's no such thing as death saving. Easy. We have new rules for armor: light, medium, heavy, and ultra heavy. Ultra heavy reduces speed by 10 feet, so that we've added a new class of your hit points either. And armor comes in different pieces: helmet, body, legs, and gloves. PCs regenerate 1 hit point at the end of their turn. There are certain types of resistances: acid, temperature, which is called in heat. We have new rules: electricity, life, which is necrotic and so forth, poison, and martial, which is physical. Each armor has a resistance listing. That value is reduced by that damage inflicted. Helmet, body, legs, and gloves. So these things add up. And so a whole set can give you these values: 0, 10, 9, 0, 6, and that spreads across these values here. A light armor will give you plus 5 hit points, medium will give you plus 10, heavy gives you plus 15, and ultra heavy will give you plus 20. So we have also rules. At the end of your turn, your total distance moved can affect AC. 15 feet plus 1 AC, 30 feet plus 2, 45 and so forth, and 60 will give you a plus 4. So the more you move, the more your AC goes up. A light armor will give you you can aim for free in your turn. It must be at the beginning of your turn, and it offers advantage on ranged attacks until the end of your turn. And it reduces speed by 50%. You also have rules for weak spots. AC, natural 20 is an auto hit, does a crit. You can score a crit without a natural 20, pretty commonplace. We also have exploding dice. Score a max value on a damage die, roll an additional die. That's why if you roll a 6, you add another d6. Each weapon has a maximum number of weak spot die, and we showed you earlier with the weapon examples. Natural 20 is an auto hit, does a crit. So if, for example, if you have 46 damage, weak 2, the maximum number of exploding dice per turn is 2. Once weak dice are used, you regain them all at the beginning of your next turn. And each die can only explode once. We also have rules for, we showed you, called a stagger, which coincides with critical hits. Crit and stagger are basically the same thing. So if it's a stagger, it's a critical hit. If you score a critical hit, weak spots explode on 5s and 6s. You increase your damage die by 1. You double the ability modifier, and the stagger. And then the stagger rule. The stagger rule is target must make a DC physical saving throw. Pick the highest modifier between strength, dex, con, and its base DC 10. Failure indicates the target is dazed. Dazed targets can either move or take an action. Not both. Action attacks have disadvantage, and weapons can offer a modifier to this, which we also saw. And the stagger. And then the stagger rule. Hearing double or triple. Make a DC physical saving throw. Pick the highest modifier between strength, dex, con, and its base fixes it. Failure indicates the target is dazed. Dazed targets can either move or take an action. Not both. Action attacks have disadvantage, and weapons can offer a modifier to this, which we also saw. And the stagger. Echo. Hearing double or triple. Hopefully that might have taken it away. If I had the volume down, let's hope that actually improves it. Let me know if it's still there. Okay, so let's see here. Small echo. Meanwhile, let's hopefully that might have desktop away. Let's drop that down, and hopefully that should fix it. Okay. Let's see if that works. Wait to OBS, turn down desktop audio. And I'm just having audio from the mic. Let's see how that looks. Okay, it is gone. Thank you. Good thing we didn't do the whole video like this. Okay. So, if people really want, I will update and send this file out so people can play around with it. We have conditions. We talked about stagger and daze. There's also a new ability called slow, and affected target speed is halved. It takes a -2 penalty to AC and dexterity saving throws, and it can't use reactions. On its turn, it can either use an action or a bonus action, not both. Regardless of the creature's abilities or magic items, it can't make more than one melee or ranged attack during its turn. If the creature attempts to cast a spell with a casting time of 1 action, roll a d20. On 11 or higher, the spell doesn't take effect until the creature's next turn. This is basically the slow spell. Then we have bleed effects. Weapons that inflict bleed inflicts 1d6 damage at the beginning of the target's turn. A DC 10 con save for free at the end of the turn recovers. Pretty simplistic. So with that out of the way, let's look at the way classes work. Now we know, if we can enter one of these pages, so this is, what is this? This is one of the, this is Handler. This is one of the classes. Let's see what else we have here. Remnant 2, let's see here. Challenger, Handler. Let's look up Gunslinger, because I know Gunslinger quite well because that's what I play. And there's also a Hunter. Also, actually, let's go up Hunter first. Hunter is one of the first ones you can get. Now, like everything else, this is 10 levels, and we're not going to change that. Now, with something like 5th edition or like most rules, we are going to, it works with 20 levels. So with this situation, we're at 10 levels, but thankfully, if you know Remnant, you actually can pick 2 archetypes. So this is a system that's almost similar to the way D20 Modern works, where you get 10 levels from one class and then 10 levels from another class, and it adds up to 20. So you pick an archetype, which is the same as a class. You do it at first level, and at some point along the ways, you can eventually pick up a second class. Now, in the game, you basically, like everything else, you have to explore in order to get it. That can apply. We can say that a GM, the player must find a way to gain the knowledge, which is realistic. I mean, most people say, oh, I'm picking up a wizard subclass or multi-classing into a wizard, and yet in the game you can say, like, there is no way you can multi-class in your current situation. You have to find an arcane library, you got to study there, and then I'll let you multi-class. So you can still create the rule where players have to create a justification for when they're ready to multi-class. So we're looking at the Hunter very specifically to start off with. This is the Hunter class, which equals our archetype, so we're going to ignore all of that. And we know there's 10 levels. Now, that being said, we are not going to have a base attack bonus. We're not going to do that because of the way the system works. The monsters will be designed appropriately that you probably won't need to. Most of the time, these extra levels are just going to get you access to these abilities. And they're not going to get you more hit points. They're not going to increase your base attack bonus. Once again, this is not something you would find in 5th edition, but it's going to work well within our Remnant system. So we're going to ignore the weapons because we've talked about weapons already. We talked about the armor, and there is something called a perk. Now, a perk is a static ability. Now, also, okay, so you can have 2 archetypes. That doesn't change. So 2 archetypes. And you can, and there's one that's dominant, right? And that's your primary. And your primary is on the screen. That's on the left-hand side. So if you have 1 dominant, you probably wonder why that means, because you only can have 1 perk working at a time. So 1 dominant, perk active, but you can switch during a short or long rest. So you can switch between dominant archetypes. That's a pretty simple one. So this is an example here for the perk for the Hunter. Let's go into Hunter actually. So this is Hunter, and its perk is static. It's always in effect. It's passive. And let's open this up so we can see it. Okay, so Dead to Rights, deals 65 base damage, weak spot, extends the duration of active Hunter skill by 2.5, can extend their timer beyond initial duration, and it goes up at level 5 and 10. That's pretty straightforward. That's easy enough, so you can easily say, once we look at this perk, and then we'll go levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Really hate it when it does that. Let's just clear that off so we don't have to mess with it. Okay, so we know that you get the Dead to Rights there, and it gets better at 5 and gets better at 10. Pretty straightforward. Now I'm going to move that, close this up here so we can see this. Okay, so Dead to Rights. Deals 65 base damage, extends the duration of active hunter skills by 2.5. Okay. So that's obviously just a damage bonus at this point. So Dead to Rights. So let's look up Dead to Rights. And we'll see it's 65. I'm trying to think about here what the damage values are. Probably 3 dice, so plus 3 dice 6 to weak spots. Now that doesn't actually match with our rules here. So we know that weak spots are exploding dice. So what it would do, it would make sense then, it'd be plus 3 weak to weapons. So what does that mean? That means whenever you have a weapon, its weak is automatically increased by 3, because that allows you to do more damage. That means you get to score more weak damage depending on the number of weapons you have. That seems pretty straightforward. It also, we say the fact that extended duration of... So, let's see the weapons. And it also, well, let's see, it extends hunter abilities by 1 additional round if, say, yeah. Okay, so there has to be something that allows this timer to run out. So this is 2.5 seconds to 3 seconds to 3.5. Extend timer beyond this initial duration. So it's interesting that dealing 65. Oh, that's the trigger. Dealing 65 base damage extends the duration. Okay, I'm reading this wrong. Give you an idea. I can't remember. So it's not. You have to be able. Okay. So Dead to Rights means if you score a certain amount. So if you explode weak dice 3 times, it extends hunter abilities by 1 additional round. And of course, we know now, so that's the way that rule works. We'll put that in there. That Dead to Rights here decreases that trigger to twice. And is this one? So twice and once. So if you do it once, you get an extension to your abilities by 1 additional round. Now, that being said, yeah, I might. The problem is, like, these damage dice are pretty low, so I don't want to do it too much. Or it's something, actually, I can do this better. Let's increase this to 5. 4 times, and then 3 times. Around. But with a specific rule that these need not be with a single attack. Specifically, it's over an entire attack turn. So it has nothing to do. It doesn't have to be per attack. It is for the whole thing. So if you have a 3 or 4 rate of fire, you're actually rolling a lot of dice. And we may actually increase this to 6, but we'll do that for 5, 4, and 3. So at 3, it's much easier to do this 1 additional round. Let's go back to that. Now, the extending time does change. So the damage value drops. We can see the damage value drops. I wish I could do that, but I can't. And then the amount of duration extends. We're going to ignore the duration for now. That's because extends it by a half a second. Within the gameplay rules, nothing much applies there. So that's the prime perk. Let's look at these abilities. Now, these are your abilities. I'm trying to get unlocked to level 1, upgrade to level 6, level 2, 7, 3. Okay, so these also work within our favor. So Deadeye is 1, goes to level 6. So that's Deadeye, which is something else you get. And it gets better here. And we have Return to Sender, which is here. And it upgrades at 7. Wow, it's almost like you know what you're doing. Okay, and then this one. Oh, if I have to open this up again. Still, come on. Badly made. Okay, level 4. And level 9. Okay, maybe if I can I shrink this, maybe that'll help. Yeah, there we go. That'll help there. Okay, so big question here. Would the trigger stack if you have other players playing the same class? Well, I'd have to imagine no. I don't believe the trigger stacked for individual players. But it would be, single attack over an entire turn. But obviously, yeah, there's no. It's not 100 build by one additional round. These need to be a single attack, but they must all be yours. Obviously, the actual way I'm writing this will be better later down the road once we actually go in and define these rules. So that one is a lockdown. So that one's is. So that's still giving me grief. Oh God, I hate this freaking website. 4 and 9 for intuition. So there's nothing for 3. Interesting. Intuition. Now, 5th edition's philosophy, you get something at every level. So, and these are skills. We'll talk about skills in a second, because skills will be something a little different. So with here, Deadeye, gain 4% damage and 1.5% weak spot damage, increases with hunter level. Gain 24% range damage, 9% weak spot, and range critical chance, increases with hunter level. Let's see, is there more information on this? Deadeye, and then gain 24% range damage and 9% weak spot damage and 5% crit chance. Increases with hunter level. Level 10 is 40% damage and 15%. Okay, now for those people who need to be made aware, these abilities, specifically, let's go into here. Oh, I screwed up the page somehow. Okay. I don't know what I just did. Okay, whatever. Oh, that's better anyway. Okay. So we're looking at here 4% damage, weak spot damage, increases with hunter level. Upgrade unlocked to level 6, gain 24% range damage, and you get crit chance, increases with hunter level again. Which weird, it's kind of odd how they're wording that. That basically implies that this increases and a level 6 increases again. You think it would just make more sense to list all of the 10 levels rather than have it break up like that. That's kind of annoying. So let's look up. They must all be yours on attack turns. Okay, so we're doing that. We're doing Deadeye now. And well, I think it's pretty straightforward. Plus 1 dice 6 damage. As we already stated, weapons all are listed in damage dice. So a weapon does 2d6, 3d6, 4d6, 5d6. Or, even better, that would actually be really stupid. I was going to say up 1 damage step, because we've already established that the weapons go up in steps. The only issue with that, we would have to list technically 11 and 12 steps, because we would have to have it go up accordingly. So, but that would be technically the more balanced thing to do rather than just increase the damage by 1 die 6. Plus 4% range damage isn't much. So we'll just say plus 1 damage. We'll just say plus 1 damage for now, for first level. And let's see here. Increase with hunter level. Okay, we'll say And because we get a big jump at level 6. Now, what people don't know is that these perks have to be activated. And this is something else that's important. You have to activate it, and then you've got a time period. So when it comes to, there's the prime perk, which is static, as we mentioned. And then we have the regular perks. These are activated with a bonus action. And let's see here. Now, one thing these are not telling you is how long they last. Because each of these abilities has a certain lifespan to it. Oh, no, that's the... No, those are the skills. I'm sorry, I am messing up here. Because there's traits, there's skills, and then perks. Okay, so these are passive. The skills are the activated abilities. Okay, so I think the damage perk, yeah, +1 damage, I think is a good one. And at 6th level, actually no, let's just make it this. Let's do +2 damage. Increases the hunter level. Don't really give me details on how it increases though. That's really frustrating. Gain 24% range damage and 9% weak spot damage. So we have weak spot damage from there. So we'll say weak increases by +1 for each weapon. That's pretty straightforward. That gives you an extra +1 to explode, which also gives you a better chance to get dead to rights to work. So that would work accordingly. And at 6th level, increases to +4. Actually, no. Let's see. Increases to +1 die 6. Yeah, that'll work. Increases to +1 die 6 damage. I'm famished. Damage instead of +2. And then weak increases to +2. So that's a pretty decent ability. Return to sender. Kills due to weak spot critical hits. Increase ammo drops by 25%. We haven't really dealt with ammo drops because that basically is a GM thing. When you kill something, something drops. I don't think we're going to get into that. But theoretically, when you're dealing with a GM and you have a bunch of monsters, every time a monster drops, there would be, instead of the really convoluted and complicated treasure system that would be in DMG, it would just be a quick reference table that I would make, a very quick reference table. You kill a monster, the GM rolls a dice, and it tells you exactly what fires out. And if, kills due to weak spot damage, increases ammo drops by 25%. I can also have fun and say that the ammo drop rolls are done by the players. That's something talking into when it comes to drops, saying the fact that when a creature drops, the players roll for treasure. Now, someone's going to say that player is going to automatically roll. It was like, oh, look at me, I rolled 0-0. I get everything. The reason why is that I think I like the ammo drops are a roll. Yeah, but do you think that it's a good idea for the players to do it? When a creature drops, players roll for treasure. It's a simpler percentage die. And it can drop health or ammo. And it's either light ammo or heavy. And it's very simple. And players have to go over to pick up the light ammo or the heavy ammo or the health, and there's a percentage. I think that's better because I think the GM is going to have a lot more problems because you're dealing with 4 or 5, maybe 6 monsters on the screen at a time. They're tracking all of that. I think it would be definitely up to the players to do it on their own. And honestly, I've always had an issue with games that try to include rules to stop players from cheating. The GM is better. The player will cheat. And literally, I'm getting to that right now. My issue is that, and this I've talked about this in other podcasts a long, long time ago. I really have never cared for rules that are implanted to try to discourage cheating. I have the issue with the GM as well. We can easily make it as an option. We can say, look, somebody has to roll. We're not saying it has to be the GM every single time. If the GM trusts the players to have them roll because they are dealing with it, I can see players or GM rolls for treasure, percentage die, it can drop health or ammo, light ammo or heavy ammo. So it comes down to that. I'm not going to deal with the roll right now, but basically creature drops, you do the dice, say, okay, 2 things drop, and a player, then you have to coordinate distance, okay, because it drops at that creature's location. You can't just say, well, I pick it up. I go, well, you can't. You're 25, 30 feet away. You have to move. You have to pick it up. I know things happen instantaneously, but we'll say bonus action to pick up 1 drop, just to make things a bit interesting. So you have to pick up. You have to use a bonus action to pick up. Can't be a reaction. In the game, you basically can run over something and you pick it up automatically. But I like the idea that it actually requires some measure of effort. Okay, so that's dropping rules. We've added another rule back to here. And so the reason, okay, also for Mr. Bow, the reason why I think players should do the roll is because of the modifier. If the player's like, oh, remember, I killed that creature. What about reloading? Well, once again, we're dealing with reloading within the 5th edition framework with... this is where things get interesting. When I originally wrote Ultramodern 5, it took an action to reload. But there was a... when you got to 5th edition, their rules changed, and they said reloading was a bonus action, and so that was their rule, and so I kind of had to confine to their rules. We can say, for example, that by default, reloading takes an action, but we know that there are abilities in the game that allows you to reload a lot faster. So I think reloading should take an action, but obviously we'll have abilities when they don't. So we'll go back up to here. So anyway, we can say, once again, return to sender. Upon death, ammo drops increase by, we can even say 25%, because we are using a percentage die for the ammo drop. And then at level 7, it increases to 50%. Pretty straightforward. So that's return to sender. That leaves us with, oh, there is one. Urgency. I didn't see that on the other page. Okay, that's good. Urgency. What's this one? Firearms gain 50% reload speed after a kill. Last 3 seconds. Hey, look at that. There's a rule right there for that. Okay, so urgency simply is on a kill until the beginning of your next turn. Reloading takes a bonus action. Pretty straightforward right there, eh? So now that means we're going to get it again at late level, so let's look at urgency again. We can say here, reloading 15%. And let's see. Okay, firearms gain 50% reload speed after a kill, last 3 seconds. Firearms gain 50% reload speed and 15... So it increases by 30%. Why would they word it that way? That's really stupid. Okay. So we can say increases to a free action. I know people can say there's no such thing as a free action. Just go with it. Increases to free action. Or so we can say increases. So it can be done once for free on your turn. But we also say increased movement speed after a kill lasts 5 seconds. But so we can say +5 movement. Hey, that seems pretty simple enough. So that's that one. Now we leave it to intuition. Intuition starts at 4. Using a relic extends the duration of any active hunter skill by 5 seconds. Effects degrades with each subsequent use. Now, we're talking about skills in a second here. So we can simply say, using a relic extends a skill by 1 round. So what's the change up at level 9? Using a relic extends the duration of any active skill by 10 seconds. Intuition, you can say 2 rounds. I don't like that as much. Effect degrades with each subsequent use. Weak spot, okay, well, so we can also say extend skill by 1 round. I don't know if I need to add in the degrading ability or not. I haven't figured that out yet. Let's look at intuition. So we have 2 rounds. Weak spot kills against marked enemies increase speed. Oh, right, Hunter's Mark. Okay, let's see here. 2 rounds and also weak spot kills against marked enemies. Increase relic speed. Now, I'll say by 1 step, because we should probably define time, because you basically have a time, the maximum amount of time is 1 round. And you can say, technically, that I guess we have to define a full round action, which 5th edition doesn't do. For people don't know, 3.5, as a result, all the Paizo rules, outside of just your action or standard action or an action, you also had something that was a full round action. This was something that was taken from 3.5, which means it ate up your entire round. So that means you did this and this alone for an entire turn. You couldn't move, you couldn't do a bonus action, you couldn't do anything for free. This was 100% your action. So let's bring it back. That's full round action. I know this is going to be controversial. So a full round action is all effort to 1 action, no move, no free, no bonus. And then, of course, you have your action, your bonus action, and I'm going to define it, the free action. And that's your this is something from 4th edition also, by the way, where there was a time ratio, right? Where it basically made a full round action could turn into an, you could basically, you could go down this hill, but you couldn't go up this hill. I'm not sure why I'm doing that. But that's the flow. Right? So if you reduce the cost of something, you reduce the cost from a full round action to an action, a full round action to a bonus action, to a free action. That's the timer. Now, so if this also sounds familiar, you'd be amazed, but there's a board game, not like a board game, a card game called Apocrypha. The Pathfinder card game does the same thing, and a huge critical mechanic of the game is reducing the cost of a card. Within that game, there's actually about 7 different costs. And the way the cost works is that you place a card out of the game completely. That's the worst cost. Then you put it in your discard pile. You can never see it again. Or sorry, you remove it from your deck. You can't play it with this game, but you don't lose it completely out of the forever, because this is a legacy game. And then there was a mechanic that said that you put the card at the bottom of your deck, to the top of your deck, and so forth. And so that's the cost. So this is the time cost chart. So when we go back up to here, we can say increases the relic speed by 1 step, but that also means, where did I put the relics here? Because I'm going to enjoy putting this rule in. Relic costs a full round, because that makes sense. Because when you do a relic action, you are in fact taking this relic out, you're placing it on someone. That takes an annoying amount of time. And so you're not moving, you're not doing anything. So it costs a full round action. I like that. We're going to keep with that and move on. So we have seen that. Increase relic speed by 1 step. Okay. And step until the end of your next turn. Now that actually says 10 seconds. Oof. Step for 2 turns. That's going to be tricky. People, one of the design philosophy of 5th edition, that something lasts 1 round or they last a minute. There's no such thing as 2 or 3 rounds. But screw it. Okay. So that is the hunter. Now, we're now getting into skills. Now, the way the skills work, you have 3 skills to your disposal, but you can only have 1 equipped. It says it right there. 1 equipped at any time. To swap it out requires... Now, there's a part of me that says you can only do it as part of a short or long rest. But I might be able to say you should be able to do it with a full round action. Because if you mean full round action, you cannot swap a skill on cooldown. Because we'll talk about that in a second here. Okay, so we have Hunter's Mark, Hunter's Focus, and Hunter's Shroud. Now, we know Hunter's Mark is level 1. So we'll say that's a level 1 ability. Let's get back to there. So level 1 here, and also you gain access to Hunter's Mark. You get Hunter's Focus, level 5, and Hunter's Shroud at level 10. Okay, so let's look at these. I notice that these don't get better. Okay, good, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so level 1, we are looking here, increases the hunter's spatial awareness by casting an aura that automatically applies Mark to all enemies within 35 meters. While senses are heightened, Hunter also gains 50% increased ranged melee damage, lasts 25 seconds. Okay. Now, when I did the Conestoga campaign supplement for Affinity a couple of years ago, I ported over the class system from Outriders. And if I ever do an Outriders video with this, I'm just going to basically bring up that book and talk about that class. But I had a time system using dice. So you basically, a cooldown die could be a die 6 or a die 4. When you activate the ability, you basically count every round down. It's not a timer, but at the beginning of your turn, reduce cooldown dice by 1. You don't roll them, you just use them as a cooldown die. This allows you to not have to worry about, wait, did I use this ability? You can look at your ability and go, no, I still have 1 more round. Now, obviously, and the way it worked was, there was also costs. In that game, you could reduce the cost of something. So you literally could have a die 12 cost, and then it would go down to a die 10, to a die 8, to a die D6, to a D4, to a D2, and a D2 would be basically a coin at that point. You can get a coin or a piece of paper and go 1, 2. It was simple as that. So that's... Okay, so we did all that stuff. Those are the rules for cooldown. We'll leave that right there for now. So that brings up what this does. Now, it's an aura. Oddly enough, in 4th edition, auras were really easy to mess with. So, yeah. We'll just kind of pretend that. So we can have an RF 5 feet. Within 35 meters, so obviously this is going to be probably 20 feet. I know it says 35, but D&D distances are smaller. So R at 20 feet applies mark. Now, of course, I have to now define mark. What is a mark? So a mark is marked enemies have disadvantage attacking anything else but you. So, in case you're wondering, that rule is directly taken from 4th edition. That was 4th edition, although 4th edition didn't have disadvantage, but it's the same. That's a mark. Let's go back. So we now define mark, and we'll say here, hunters also gain 15% range damage plus amount the last 25 seconds. So we can say now. Skills. We can say activating a skill takes a bonus action. Pretty straightforward because it doesn't take a standard action. It doesn't take long to activate one of those abilities. Or does it? Yeah, you know what? It takes a standard action. Yeah, we really have to do a standard action. Okay, back to Hunter's Mark. Applies mark. Let's go. Okay. Realize this is going off the screen. I don't want that to happen. So let's reduce this down so you can see it. Because this is a good enough screen here. Okay. So, Hunter also gains 15% increased range margin damage. Last 25 seconds. Okay. But its cooldown is 70. So, you cannot swap on a skill on cooldown. Or at 20 feet. Mark. +2 damage bonus. And lasts a D4 rounds. What was it say? Lasts 4 rounds. Cooldown die. I'll say it's D8. So we get the Hunter's Focus. Aiming down sights uninterrupted and without shooting for 5 seconds causes the hunter to enter focus state. And that's easy. So we see. We had the rule for aiming. What was the aiming rule again? It was you can do it for free on your turn. Okay, so we can apply that to say use a bonus action to aim. Enters focus state. Now it says reduces weapon spread, recoil, and sway by 75%. Grants 25% ranged weak spot and damage, and 10% range crit type. Now we don't have rules for spread or recoil or sway, so we're just going to ignore those for now. But we do like the 25% range weak spot damage and 10% range crit chance. So looking at a weapon like the Enigma that's here. Well, focused. Let's see here. We will say, obviously, once again, we'll do the same thing, +2 damage. Let's see here. See, +2 damage. And we will say, obviously, weak die increases by +1. And we will also say that crit increases by 1. That seems pretty straightforward. And while focused, the bonus action to aim applies mark. Now, Hunter's Focus is not a skill you activate because it's automatically in effect, though, isn't it? Because it's not a skill you... I can't remember whether or not the Hunter's Focus was a skill you had to activate, because here it says 0.5 enters the focus state. So I don't think that one is an ability that you have to activate. Either that, or this is not telling you. Ah, you see, there it is. Last 20 seconds, cooldown 50. Okay, so there is information on that. Okay. All right, so same thing. So that one says 25 seconds. This says 20 seconds. That's pretty much identical between the two of them. So we'll say lasts 4 rounds, cooldown die. Now, that one says 70 seconds. This one said 50. If I'm full on 48 seconds, so even better. So that one's only going to be maybe a D4, maybe a D6. We'll do D4. So that comes to Hunter's Shroud. Hunter's Shroud. Become shrouded, reducing enemies' awareness and making them harder to hit while moving. Reduces enemy awareness and making them harder to hit while moving. Attacking or activating a mod or a skill will instantly exit a shroud. Okay. Now, this seems pretty straightforward. Advantage to stealth checks. I can't stealth checks. That seems pretty short. Yeah, I think there's no objection on that one. Advantage to stealth checks. And the same thing with stealth. Attacking or using a skill exits shroud. And at that point, applies mark to all enemies within 10 feet. And grant ambush. Well, ambush, we kind of know it's surprise round, so ambush, which means advantage to attack rolls. Now, you're probably wondering, wait a second, aiming already applies advantage. So, you forget one thing I was thinking of applying. That's something like for double advantage, triple advantage, you can apply double advantage. You can apply double advantage, which is something I pulled from Malifaux. You can apply double advantage in Malifaux. So why not? Keep that rule. I was actually, when I was doing the design studio for my own version of a 5.5 or 5.75 rule set, one of the things I liked imposing was double or triple advantage. Advantage to, or we can also, alternately, you can simply say +1 weak and +1 crit to all attacks. I'm up in the air on which one I like better. Yeah, and well, it says here, of course, ambush increases range melee damage by 50%, which diminishes over duration. Ranged melee attacks apply mark. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we won't do the advantage on attack rolls. We'll simply say +2 weak, +2 crit to all attacks until the beginning of your next turn. And then that's a new rule. We'll apply that to the rules section here. Look at all these new rules we're adding. Okay. +2 weak, +2 crit to all attacks till the beginning of your next turn. Now we'll see here, this only lasts 15 seconds. It's the lowest one here. So we can see these last 4 rounds, lasts 2 rounds, and it has the biggest cooldown of the bunch. Which was D8. This is going to be a D10. Okay, so undershot, that's one. We're going to be within feet, ambush, blah, 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 next turn, last 2 rounds. Applies mark as well. Oh, yeah, and then enters shroud at the beginning of your next turn. So you don't lose it. You go right back into shroud right at the next turn. That's kind of that makes that ability a lot more powerful. That being said, I don't know. Maybe I'll do it 3 rounds. Now we'll keep it at 2 rounds for now. Maybe, I guess maybe that's one thing. And if people test it and you think it's too short, so basically you activate it on your turn. Now that being said, I do say that Hunter's Skills takes a standard action. And having it for 2 rounds means that you basically don't get to use it that first turn. So automatically, we're gonna make that 3 rounds, just because we need to. And these being 4, still valid. You're still doing it 3 times. And so that is the skills. So now we have the traits. Now traits. This is where I've been dreading traits for a while. Every class gets a trait. In the case of the hunter, he gets long shot, and there's 10 levels. Now, unlike everything else, now we've already said that with weapons you have to get resources to upgrade them. That becomes drops because this is basically a loot and shoot. But with long shots, you have to search around for trait points, and you have to do that by exploring the map. I really hate that. I don't like the idea of having to use the exploration, because the GM can be stingy or not. We have to create a situation where the players get them basically regardless. Now, it should be noted when it comes to traits, there's a lot of traits. All players start off with these ones. We'll talk about traits here in a second here. And the traits have 10 levels, as before. Everyone starts off with vigor, endurance, spirit, and expertise. And then you get 1 for your class, which, as we talked about, is long shot. But you have to spend trait points for this. Now, I'm trying to figure out how to do trait points. Now, with trait points, my initial instinct was to have it level-based, which means you gain a level, you gain a trait point. But we know that's not good. And I don't like saying you get 2 or 3 trait points, because there is the maximum of 85 trait points for players to distribute freely. So let's see here. However, it's changed without paying +1. You would level traits are full. Yeah. So your class trait goes up by +1 per level. That doesn't change. But these other ones, like expertise, endurance, spirit, you got to spend points on those, and you have to spend points that you find along the way. Okay, so we can say gain 1 point per level for your class trait. And I can say you gain 1 point automatically for gaining a level. But the max level 10, players can have a maximum, oh there it is, players can have a maximum of 110 trait points that benefit their player's skill. The player's prime and secondary archetypes will automatically assign up to 10 trait points per archetype based on that. We just said there. There's a maximum of 85 remaining trait points available. Okay, so there's 10 taken up by this one. Prime archetypes will assign an additional 5 trait points into core traits that cannot be reassigned. What? Okay, so your primary and secondary archetypes give you 10 each. So that's 20. That goes down to 90. And prime archetype will assign an additional 5 trait points into core traits that cannot be reassigned. Okay, so these are the core traits. Okay, so we can easily say, and every 2 levels, Prime archetype. Okay. Every 2 levels, Prime archetype will apply 1 trait to one of the 4 Prime skills of your choice. Good. Now, that still leaves up the fact that it still leaves 85 points that players will encounter along the way. The other issue is how incredibly small the increments are. So if we go to something like endurance, yeah, you know, they give you stamina, which we've talked about stamina before. Now, with something like, okay, we'll talk about, you can make some trait points findable in the world. I know, you can find trait points in the world. My issue is that we'd have to make it a system where it makes sense mechanically. I mean, we can say bosses drop them, but we have to make sure that throughout the 20 to 30 levels they're playing, that they're going to get a lot of these excess trait points. So, I mean, it basically has to. Now, I mean, it's a treasure drop, really, when you get down to it. It's a treasure drop. It's a, you know, it becomes kind of like magic. So instead, although we'll talk about magic in a second, instead of common magic drops, players can find trait points in the form of scrolls, because they're basically books anyway. And we can make them say players should find between 2 and 6 trait points per level. So they are, I mean, 85 split up between 20 levels. You know what, we can say 2 and 4 per level. Additional ones can be found even after the character is maxed. So yeah, okay, we'll do it as a reward drop. Having it location basically means you have to have pre-built modules where you determine where the trait points are. A GM can do that, but it gets really tricky. Okay, let's look at a couple of these. Let's look at endurance. And increases max stamina by 3, 6, 9, 12, blah, blah, blah. Since we know our system, we can say stamina increases by 1 per level. I can't make it any easier than that. Okay, expertise reduces skill cooldown. Now this, it gets interesting. Now we were talking about the skill cooldowns here. We talk about, and you know, this is where things get nasty. It's percentages, which can be very annoying. Now we talked about these dies being die 8. I'm gonna stick this to 6, and I'm gonna increase this to 12, and I'm gonna make this 10. And so and this is expertise. Increase skill cooldown by 1. So when you set the cooldown, you do it by 1. The problem is, as we just established, this is not going to work with our system. So how do I make this work within a die 10? Now, the way I did it, I didn't have 10 steps in Conestoga. So when we look at this, increase cooldown by 1. Whew. I think we could do maybe a gambling thing. You can say there's a 25, 1 plus 25% chance for another +1 cooldown, maybe. And then we can cause that to stagger. We can actually make it even more insidious. 20% to add one more cooldown, plus 30% chance for a +1 cooldown. And we'll say 1 plus 40% chance, and 1 plus 50% chance. This is now it's going to be 2, and then this is going to be 2 plus 20%, 2 plus 30%, 3 plus 40%, and because 10's always better than all the other ones, oops, sorry, it's going to go straight to 3. So that's expertise. What's next? We are going to go to Spirit. Mod power generation. Oh God, mod power. Oh. Okay. Mod power. So, what is mod power? We'll say mod power is all elemental damage. So it's all damage that is not physical, which we've established with the armor is acid, temp, electricity, life, and poison. Pardon me. But that's not how mod power works, if I remember correctly. That's tough, because mod power is a very loosey-goosey system, because it's basically when you enter a skill, you have this power system to it, and all the percentages go up. But since we're not applying percentages to this system, it becomes a lot trickier. So, there's gotta be a way to make that work, because sometimes it's not. That is really tough. I know it's a core trait, but that kind of comes into a big question here. Like, because you have mod power. What is mod power? Really get down to it. Mod power is the resource. Yeah, the heart of weapon mod usage is mod power. A resource Remnant 2 doesn't exactly explain well to players. Yeah, you don't think? Although it isn't exactly overly complicated, players will still need to understand. What is mod power? How does it work? Simply put, mod power is a resource that players spend to use their weapon mods. This is denoted by the ring around the player's mod icon in the lower right-hand portion. Right. Because we haven't talked about the weapon mods. We've talked about... right. Because we haven't dealt with weapon mods. Because we have all the weapons. Right? But we haven't talked about the mods. We ran out of time last time. So when we talk about mod power, let's think about, I can remember here, a weapon for Remnant 2 as an example. Now, the weapon mods for that one. Yeah, we could easily say, because it's stuff like the Chaos Driver does electrical damage for the Enigma. And when we look at Deceit, the weapon mod for that one has the sword fragments. So we can kind of play off of the idea. So mod power, we said the fact mod power is basically all effects related to weapon mod activation. So the question is, at that point, how in the world does are we doing with spirit? How does spirit play with that? That's a very good question. Because it's very much a pool of energy. Well, that creates a very interesting point. If it's a pool of energy, then we can make it a pool of energy. Let's look at the way mods work very, very quickly. So we won't have time to do a lot of classes. We may just do the hunter here, but for that, we're going to have to play around with mod power and talk about some of these mods. So, a weapon mod, there's tons of them. You can add them. So can be found here. Let's see. Let's pick up one here, and yeah. So weapon mod also have 10 levels. Let's see here. And so there are different types of one. Let's look up some examples of a weapon mod. Let's look at let's grab a couple here. If you have any suggestions which weapon mods I should play with, let's try Accelerator. Okay. Charge melee attacks increases the speed of all melee attacks by 10% for 5 seconds. Okay. Let's see what else we have. I mean, I'm not going to be able to do all these. Well, I can remember what were the... I'm trying to remember where are some of the really well-known ones. Because I know the Chaos Driver is with the Enigma. So let's do Chaos Driver, because I've already done... So Chaos Driver, that's for the Enigma. Right? It drives electrical rods into targets, creating tethers between them. So we have... that's the rule entry. Chaos Driver drives electrical rods into targets, creating tethers between them with a range of 10 meters. These tethers continuously deal shock damage. Additional targets embedded with rods suffer ongoing shock damage, which increases by 20% for each additional rod attached to them. Once again, this is something that can be do more details when we do the Chaos Driver. It is an exclusive weapon mod for Enigma, cannot be equipped or found elsewhere. Yeah, we know that. Okay. Exclusive weapon mod. Okay. So we can say that we can tie mod power. This is where things can get really complicated. We can tie mod power into a specific pool of energy. And when the mod activates, you can spend that mod power to do things. That gets really tricky. Oh, man. I'm in the right mind to muck around with the way how this rule works, because mod power right? The ring will gradually generate after every successful shot or attack that players land against an enemy. So, oh, okay. Right, mod power just simply tells you when the weapon triggers. Right. You know, I played 50 hours into this game. You think I'd remember this shit. So mod power is energy built up for every successful hit. Energy build up for every successful hit. Every weapon mod has a mod trigger, which is the value added to mod power. Okay, every weapon has mod power, which is the value. Oh, no, that the power needs to reach to trigger the weapon mod. Now, we can say, just say the fact that maybe something like Chaos Driver requires 20 mod power to trigger. And we can say that every successful hit, or I mean, actually more specifically, we can say each time a target suffers damage from your attack, mod power increases by 1. Now, we can muck with this and make it a bit easier by saying mod requires, say, like 50, and mod power increases by, say, 4. And the reason why we're going to give this range is that you can simply say, once again, mod power, when you're looking back at Spirit and how much value the mod power gives you, each target suffers damage from your attack, mod power goes up by 3. It takes a while. Or again, going to say 2. So when we get to something like Spirit, we can say increases mod power with each attack by 1. Now, increasing it all the way to 10 is not going to work, because that's going to get really crazy really fast. So with Spirit, by 1, there's a way to do this. What I'm trying to say, because we don't want it to go all the way here, but we also want this. Now, this I don't mind so much, because you're only doing it once your ability basically expires. I don't like the idea by putting a percentage chance here, because you're doing that with every attack roll. Increases by 1, increases by 1, plus 1, the end of your turn. Okay, with a critical hit. We can say that. Well, these are in stacks, so I'm not going to keep on repeating this ability. Plus 1 with a critical hit, plus 1 for each 2 weak dice per hit. And so these can stagger, right? We can say it's now plus 2 with each attack, plus 2 crit, plus 2 weak, and then we can go plus 3 attack, plus 3 crit, plus 3 weak, and then finally a plus 4 per attack. That's not so bad. That actually makes sense. Obviously, we have to then, you got to track your mod power, but then when your ability activates. That's not so bad. Now, the one thing about this is this seems really complicated, but remember that the class itself is pretty simplistic. So much is being taken up by your weapons and all that, so it is going to be a much more complicated system. But remember, we're not dealing with 35 spells. Everybody basically works the same way. So that was Spirit. Let's do, well, Expertise, Spirit. Vigor should be easy. I mean, that's just hit points. I mean, that's not even trying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, whatever. It's like, we can say every one gives you plus 2 hit points. I mean, hit points plus additional 2 at level 10. That's not even trying to be hard. Okay, so those are the 4 cores. Now, we have long shot now, because we have long shot up here. Increases ideal range by 1. Oh, that's just perfect. I mean, that's That's almost too easy, because you can just say, because we increase ideal range by 60 centimeters. Okay, we're not going to do that. They're all going to be done in 5 feet increments. 5 feet, and that's going to be 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 60. That seems to be straightforward. Now, maybe within the ranges of D&D, we may want to increase this, but I think that's basically fine. So that's ideal. That's simple. That was almost too easy. We have ammo reserves. Ammo reserves just means your maximum ammo. Yes, there's actual maximum ammo. We won't deal with that one now. Triage increases healing by 5%. Let's see here. And once again, you can pick up a lot of these. Footwork. Increase movement speed by aiming by 5 feet. These are all pretty straightforward, because even that one, you see you can't move. But obviously we can say you can have your movement done in 2, 3, 4, 5 feet, whatever the case may be. Okay, so where are we at now for time? We are 1 hour, 21 minutes. Okay, so that seems pretty straightforward. We really get down to it. That took a lot longer than I was expecting, because obviously I forgot we had to add powers here. And obviously I was a bit loosey-goosey on the mod power thing, but I forgot about the weapon mod. So Chaos Driver, once again, these are complicated rules, because at this point, and people wonder, this may be too complicated, but ultimately the weapon mod is a spell. Because that's what it is. A weapon mod is basically a spell. Takes a standard action, or takes an action, takes an action to activate. Each mod is different. And so when you really get down to it, that's basically what it is. Every class gets a spell, depending on your weapon of choice. What is different? Each weapon has its own mod power. That I remember. So, because one thing about this game, like everything else, is that, and we'll talk about this with additional rules, that players can only have 2 ranged weapons, a light and a heavy, equipped. And 1 melee weapon. Swapping between these 3 takes a bonus action. You can swap with other weapons, but that takes a full round action. Right. So that basically, and only equipped weapons can generate mod power. Oopsie. So that's a lot of complicated rules to involve with this, but I don't mind it so much. I mean, we are dealing with like a fundamental shift in how these rules work. But it shows you how possible it is. Like, a lot of people will say that you can't adjust these rules for specific settings, and I think I've proven very clearly that you absolutely can. Like, once again, because Remnant isn't 5e, there was a lot of changes, but I bet you that I could easily make a 200 to 300 page book that would be easily readable to people who know 5e, and then they can take these rules and be able to go off with them. If you guys have any questions, I know of a few people watching, but if you have any questions about this, please let me know. Obviously, we have a lot of balancing to do, and there, once again, some complicated things coming into play. You have spells attached to your guns that only cook off when certain mob power hits. You have, obviously, big, like high number of attacks, high number of amount of damage. Like a Remnant character would annihilate almost any 5th edition character because these are not balanced to them. I mean, remember, on a certain weapon, you can have 4 or 5 attacks on a turn that's doing 5 or 6 dice 6 damage for each attack. But remember, the monsters that we would ultimately make are balanced to these classes. So, yeah, a monster might have 60, 70 hit points, but you're probably going to do 60, 70 points of damage, most likely, per attack. And then when you get to a monster, you're looking at a monster's having, going back to the old school days of having 2,000 or 3,000 hit points. I can only imagine how many hit points some of the end bosses have, like Apocalypse or what have you. Like you could, and when you're dealing with 3 or 4 characters, you're dealing with a situation where you can have maybe 5,000 or 6,000 hit points that you're working off of, or more. Because remember, you can technically deal with a situation that a really good character might be able to do 100 to 150 points of damage in a single action. But yeah, that's something you can absolutely do. For some strange reason, when I'm on camera, sometimes my nose gets incredibly itchy, and I don't know why. It's incredibly annoying, and it only happens when I'm on camera. So that's Remnant 2. Now, I'm going to stop it there, but clearly I could potentially, if for example, if I had the rights to do a Remnant 2 game for 5e, I would throw them this and say, look, it can be done. It is functional. Some people will say, well, wouldn't it be easier to develop a system from the ground up? You go, yes and no. When you use 5th edition as a framework, you already have some intrinsic balancing issues that are already in play, right? So what am I going to do next? So this 2 session for Remnant, I think next week I should do what I'm sure quite a few people would think would be kind of neat. So next week, it will be another evening stream, whatever time we can figure out how to do it, and I am going to adapt Helldivers. Now, right off the bat, people are going to go, well, that's a lot more simplistic. I go, yes, I know. There's a lot more rules with Ultramodern 5 we can lean in on, but there are some really neat things we can play with, primarily with things like stratagems and so forth. This is going to be a situation where there's not multiple classes. There is only one class, the Helldiver class, and we're going to use rules to show how each player can customize their own class based off of their weapons and their stratagems. But I'm going to leave it at that for now. Thanks everyone for listening in. Thank you. We actually had a few people watching the stream this time. Thank you for the few comments, Snail Mail Games and Bo Daniford. Thank you for those comments. And I hope this was fun. And let's try another one. If you have a game or a IP property that you think would be fun to be adapted, please send it up in the comments. And maybe I'll do it on a future episode. But next week, we're going to tackle Helldivers. But